For towns and cities along our coast, the issue of rising sea levels is a very real one. If tides end up going several feet higher than usual, especially in storms, that could lead to real damage. In some communities, they are already taking steps to confront that problem. Some of the early impacts of rising sea levels are already being seen and felt, and few places feel them as much as Maine islands, surrounded and supported by the tides, but also now threatened by them. Places like Vinalhaven, one of Maine's biggest fishing harbors.
I can remember like these ramps, everything being much lower. Tide, I mean, we're just past high tide now. I think tide's going again. There was always a lot more area underneath.
Millie Martin is manager of the Fishermen's Co-op. She moved home to Vinalhaven after being away for 20 years. Martin says that during monthly extra high tides, known as king tides, the water sometimes now is putting the docks at risk.
We probably have 4-foot clearance at high tide now. With a storm surge, it's much less.
Town manager Andy Dorr says just about everyone has noticed higher tides.
We have a greater threat or pressure because we're an island, right? So there's more, whereas a coastal town might have a few miles of shoreline. We've got a lot more.
They now have tide level gauges at several locations to keep track, and have already seen some problems.
One in particular is a state aid road, just about a mile out of town. In that one, on an 11-foot tide day like today, it very well could be wet and under some water. There's a tide gauge up there as well. We've seen as much as 2 feet of water on top of that road.
These are not small problems for islands and coastal towns, says Kendra Jo Grindle of the Island Institute.
It could take out a road. It could take out one of the major roads in your communities, and that's emergency services. That's getting to school every day. That's getting on and off your, on and off your island. For some of our island communities, 1.5 feet, that's their ferry terminal.
But mainland towns are also facing higher tides, and the small town of Damariscotta is taking action now.
The top of the boat ramp is at 8 feet. The storm of record was at 10 feet.
A 1.5 foot increase in tides could flood the village's main parking lot. It has happened before.
The idea, of course, is not to protect the parking lot, because tides can come and go, no damage to the parking lot. The idea is to protect the buildings that are adjacent to the lot.
So the town plans to build a seawall around the lot with a way to close off the boat ramp when needed. They wanted the wall to be just 3 feet above the lot, but manager Matt Lutkus says federal officials, who are providing much of the money, want 5 feet because seawater levels and tides are expected to keep going up. The work will start next year.
It's very important. It's important for our continued economic vitality here. It's extremely important.
Vinalhaven, too, is taking action. The town is planning to start a big construction project here in the spring. Sewer lines, sidewalks, and other needs. And Andy Dorr says, like just about every other project nowadays, coping with rising sea levels will be part of it.
And so I think we're trying to look at it in terms of when the infrastructure needs to be replaced, looking at the probability, the likelihood of the different flood scenarios, and trying to take that into consideration.
At the co-op, Millie Martin says they're making plans to rebuild the dock and the main building to go up higher above the water. Do you have 20 years to get that done?
No, I would say more like probably 10 to 12.
Like many of our coastal towns, they face tough and costly choices. Wharfs and fuel tanks, roads and buildings, all will be vulnerable if seas and tides keep rising.